Okay, let's talk about how the system really works because I still don't think people quite understand. There is the world as we see it and the systems of control that are visible to we the people. And then there is everything that happens behind the scenes. What people need to understand is that everything that is taking place on the global stage, on the world stage, serves as part of the greater plan. Now, for thousands and thousands of years, humanity has been controlled by a very small handful of people. And essentially, these people, we don't necessarily know who they are, but they are the people who operate behind the governments. This is where you get the concept of the shadow government, or the cabal, as people like to call it. But essentially, a very small handful of people own everything in this world. They own all the money. And why is money so important? Because money is what allows the system to continue to be in existence. Because once upon a time, there was a system that existed that was governed by divine law, a system in which we were all free. But if we look throughout history, we can see that our freedoms have very slowly been taken away from us over many, many centuries. And money has been at the center of how the system has continued to thrive and has continued to grow. Because money is in occult terms is what we would call an egregore. And an egregore is essentially an energetic construct, a thought form, that the more people believe in that thing, the more energy they put into it, the more emotion they put into it, the more that thing becomes reality. Now, if we really pay attention to the way the world works today, is in essence, we can say that the ruling god of this world is money, because people will do literally anything and everything for money. But this is why we live in a world which has essentially programmed us to be in a constant state of survival. And this constant state of survival is done through many different systems. Education. From the moment we are born, we are educated to look at the world in a very specific way. But what if I told you that most of the things, well, I want to say even everything that we have been taught is a lie? Media for a long time, the same media houses are basically governed by the same group of people who own and who control the world's resources. And through media, they are able to control the narrative. They are able to control the way we perceive things, because the way humanity has been controlled for a very long time is by controlling our perception of reality. And all the systems that exist in our world are created to program the way we look at the world, and the way we look at the world is going to influence the way we behave in the world. And so things like the internet, what's interesting is that the internet was created by DARPA was is the research agency for defense, essentially doing research and development for new and advanced technologies that help the military. So when you think that the internet was created for war and military purposes, we know that the internet is a tool of control. And ever since, like, I think it was like 2012, when basically everything started being censored on the internet, it becomes very difficult to find the truth, because the internet is not free for all and available. It is controlled again by the tech giants such as Meta and Google, and I don't even know their words, but their names. But these organizations, these massive global companies, are controlled essentially by the same people who own all the world's resources. The reason why there is so much going on with money at the moment is because the powers that are falling are trying to create a financial collapse, because they understand that everything in this world runs on money, that if you don't have money, basically you become stuck. So coming back to this concept of the egregore, because ever since, I think it was in like 1952 or something, I can't remember the date, but when essentially the US dollar was no longer pegged against the gold, um, that essentially this is when we went into the fiat money system. And fiat currency literally means that we all believe that because we're carrying a piece of paper that says $10 on it, that what that money is worth, that piece of paper is worth $10. And the only reason that piece of paper is worth $10 is because we as humanity have all agreed that because it says $10 on that piece of paper, then that money can buy us something. But when you think about the fact that the central banks of the world, that let's look at the Federal Reserve, for example, because everything is based on America, because America has been the global empire that has been in power since essentially the end of the Second World War. And this is why we are seeing many changes happening today, because America's position of power is slowly eroding. And so when the Federal Reserve was created, it was created by a small handful of people, most of which were connected to occult orders and who are into all kinds of dark things. But they pooled their money together and said, well, we are going to create this Federal Reserve. And because they called it the Federal Reserve, people would believe that it was connected to the federal government, when it is actually a private bank that is funded by private bankers who lend money to the government at interest, essentially creating debt out of thin air. And what's interesting is that back in the day, in like the 1700s, 1600s, whenever it was, there was something called usury. Actually, I think this goes way further back. So there was something called usury, and usury essentially was religious divine law before everything became corrupted, stating that people could not lend money at interest, because how are you creating debt out of nothing? Now, it was illegal according to divine law for people to lend at interest, and the only people who didn't really abide by these claims were the Jewish bankers. And this is how the Jewish bankers became extremely wealthy through centuries. It's because they started lending money at an interest which was not allowed by any of the Abrahamic faiths at that time. And so the more we continue to believe in money, the more we continue to believe in their system, because people keep wondering, and the thing is, the world is collapsing. The systems of the old world are collapsing, and we don't really know what is going to emerge moving forward. But what we have to understand is that money has been the controlling factor within our world for very long, because when people are constantly in a state of survival and someone comes and offers them money, of course they're going to take it. Human beings are inherently good, are inherently loving. That is the foundation of the human race. But what happens when you put an entire race of beings in a constant state of threat and survival? Well, then we are capable of doing the most horrific things. So we have to understand that everything that is playing out on the world today is being controlled by the leaders of our world, and every single government leader is part of the plan. Now, there are various degrees at which they are part of the plan, but they are all merely puppets. The people who really control the way the world works are not present and available on TV for all to see. Everyone who is seen in a position of power today has only been put there as a puppet to those who stand behind the power of presidents and monarchs and whatever it might be. And money has always been the main driving factor. So the number one way that we can start to shift this reality and to bring favor back into the hands of the people is to be very selective as to how we're spending our money. Simply choosing not to fund any of the global organizations or these global brands and only supporting local will start to really put a dent in the plan, because the only language that these people understand is money. But because we have become so comfortable, people do not want to be inconvenienced by a little bit of discomfort. And because people have not wanted to get uncomfortable, well, let's just say the Most High is forcing us to do it, because if we do not take action, well, God has other plans and action is being taken for us.